Welcome back to Kitchen Wisdom with Arina Photography. Come on into my kitchen studio, make yourself at home, and don't mind the candy thermometer sitting out. I've been making fudge again. Today we're diving into one of my favorite holiday treats, homemade fudge. And not just any fudge. We're talking about a whole frenzy of flavors, from rich chocolate to refreshing peppermint and festive pistachio. This tradition started for me the same way a lot of my holiday baking traditions did, back when I didn't have the budget to buy gifts for everyone. I turned to my kitchen instead, and fudge became a star player in my holiday gift boxes. Honestly, people look forward to this fudge almost as much as the cookies, maybe more. And don't worry, all the recipes and tools I mention will be linked in the podcast notes. And if you'd like to actually try the fudge recipes I talk about today, you can find them all on my blog at Arina Photography. So be sure to check those out too. Fudge is rich, decadent, and it feels like a special treat without being overly fussy. Plus, it lasts a good while when stored properly, which makes it perfect for gifting. Unlike cookies, which can dry out, fudge stays creamy and soft. And the best part? It looks impressive, but is actually pretty easy to make once you know a few tricks. I learned early on that fudge was a lifesaver for gifting because you can make big batches, cut it into neat squares, and suddenly you've got enough to fill multiple boxes, bags, or tins. It's the ultimate work smarter, not harder holiday candy. Honestly, fudge has become one of my favorite gifts to give, right up there with gingerbread cookies, because you can make it ahead, freeze it, and then pull it out when you need it. The freezer makes it stress-free, and having a stash ready to go means I never show up empty-handed to a holiday gathering. People think I've been working for hours, when really I just planned ahead. And here's the funny part. This little trick has saved me more than once. There was a time I completely forgot we had a holiday potluck until the night before. While everyone else was stressing about what to cook, I calmly pulled out a container of fudge from the freezer, cut it into perfect squares, and voila. I looked like the most organized mom in the room. Nobody needs to know my secret weapon lives in the freezer. Another bonus? Because fudge is so forgiving, you can mix and match flavors to suit whoever you're gifting. Got a chocoholic aunt? She's getting double chocolate fudge. Your friend who hates peppermint? No problem, pistachio it is. It's flexible, it's reliable, and it always makes people happy. Honestly, fudge is the closest thing to holiday magic I've found in my kitchen. Before we dive into flavors, let's take a quick peek at the history of fudge. Fudge, as we know it, actually popped up in the late 1800s in the United States. And the story goes that it may have started as a happy accident. Someone botched a batch of caramel and ended up with fudge instead. Honestly, I think that's the best kitchen fail in history. By the early 1900s, fudge was showing up at women's colleges, church fairs, and candy shops across the country. It became the kind of sweet that was special, a little decadent, and easy to share in bite-sized squares. One fun fact, some of the earliest published fudge recipes came from Vassar College students in the 1890s. Fudge making quickly became a social event on college campuses where young women would gather in dorm rooms, balance pans on small burners, and whip up batches to share with friends. Imagine the smell of sugary, chocolatey fudge filling the hallways. No wonder it became a craze. Another interesting detail is that fudge spread rapidly because it was seen as both an indulgence and an affordable luxury. Sugar and cocoa were becoming more widely available. So fudge was the perfect treat yourself candy of its time. Today, it still carries that nostalgic charm. You'll find it in seaside candy shops, small town fairs, and of course in plenty of holiday kitchens like mine. What I love most is how fudge has stayed this classic, old-fashioned candy that feels cozy and nostalgic, but also flexible. You can flavor it in endless ways, which brings me to my favorite part. Let's talk flavors. Classic chocolate fudge is always a winner. Rich, smooth, and universally loved. It's the one that anchors every fudge box I make. Then I like to mix it up with peppermint fudge. It's festive, refreshing, and honestly, nothing says Christmas like peppermint swirled through chocolate. My daughter loves crushing candy canes to sprinkle on top, though somehow more of the candy canes end up in her mouth than on the fudge. I've also learned the hard way that crushed candy canes melt if you add them too early, so sprinkle them on at the very end for that pretty finish. Sometimes she sneaks so many candy canes while helping that I have to hide the stash in a different cupboard just to make sure there's enough left for the fudge. And then there's pistachio fudge. It's a little more unexpected, slightly nutty, and adds that pop of green that makes holiday boxes look so pretty. I'll admit pistachios aren't cheap, but they make the fudge feel extra fancy, like something straight out of a gourmet shop. This is the one people ask me about the most because it looks so unique. It's also the one where I occasionally have to remind folks not to eat the entire pan before I can actually gift it. But that's not where my fudge adventures stop. I also make peanut butter fudge, which is always a crowd pleaser, creamy, salty sweet, and nostalgic. Another favorite is maple walnut fudge, perfect for anyone who loves those cozy fall flavors. I've even done white chocolate cranberry fudge, which looks absolutely gorgeous, with little red cranberry jewels peeking through. And if you really want to go over the top, try Rocky Road fudge with marshmallows and nuts. It's messy, but unforgettable. I've also experimented with salted caramel fudge, which tends to disappear faster than I can package it. Having a mix of flavors not only makes the gift boxes more colorful, but also gives everyone something to love. Because let's face it, not everyone is a peppermint person, not everyone loves nuts, and some people just want plain chocolate. But when there are 6 or 7 flavors to choose from, nobody can resist grabbing at least one, and usually more. Putting together a fudge sampler feels a little like being Willy Wonka in my own kitchen, minus the Oompa Loompas, though sometimes I think my daughter with her sprinkle obsession might qualify. Now, fudge does require a little precision. A candy thermometer is your best friend here. Trust me, guessing the temperature is how you end up with grainy or rock-hard fudge. And yes, I've learned that lesson the hard way. I've had batches where I thought I could just eyeball it and ended up with something closer to a chocolate brick than smooth fudge. These days, the thermometer never leaves my side, and I double check that it's calibrated before I start. A few seconds of patience saves hours of regret and teeth. I also swear by silicone spatulas and good parchment paper. Lining your pans makes cleanup a breeze and helps lift the fudge right out in one solid piece. An 8x8 pan is my go-to for most batches, but I've also experimented with loaf pans when I want thicker, taller squares that look extra fancy in gift boxes. If I'm making multiple flavors, I'll line up several pans like a little fudge assembly line and just get into the groove. Another trick I swear by? Spraying the knife lightly with cooking spray before cutting, or simply wiping it with a wet towel after each cut. It gives you clean, neat squares instead of messy crumbles. And don't forget to use a heavy-bottomed saucepan. Thin ones heat unevenly and are basically a guarantee for scorched fudge. That was another lesson I learned the hard way. And speaking of pans, let's talk about where you pour the fudge. You can get creative here. I actually have a whole video on this where I go into detail about different shapes and containers. But in short, you can pretty much use anything. I've poured fudge into cookie cutters lined with parchment to make individual shaped pieces, into cupcake liners for bite-sized servings, and even into silicone molds when I'm feeling fancy. Use your imagination. Anything that can hold its shape and be lined or greased a little can become a fudge mold. It's one of those areas where you can really have fun and make your fudge gift stand out. I've had batches where I thought I could just eyeball it and ended up with something closer to a chocolate brick than smooth fudge. A few seconds of patience saves hours of regret and teeth. I also swear by silicone spatulas and good parchment paper. Lining your pans makes cleanup a breeze and helps lift the fudge right out in one solid piece. An 8x8 pan is my go-to for most batches, but I've also experimented with loaf pans when I want thicker, taller squares that look extra fancy in gift boxes. If I'm making multiple flavors, I'll line up several pans like a little fudge assembly line and just get into the groove. Presentation matters. For gifting, I cut the fudge into neat little squares and either tuck them into decorative holiday tins or pack them in plain white bakery boxes lined with parchment. For extra polish, I sometimes use self-sealable treat bags. Great for individually wrapping pieces, especially if my daughter is bringing them to school or skating practice to share. And don't get me started about presentation. As a food photographer, presentation for me is just as important as the gift itself. It's like a dress code at a party. You wouldn't show up in pajamas, and your fudge shouldn't either. When people open a box of fudge, I want them to say, wow, before they even taste it. And ribbons, always ribbons. I love red curling ribbon because it's festive, safe, no glitter falling into food. And a single spool lasts forever. Personalized labels are a fun touch too. People love seeing their name on a gift, even if it's just a box of fudge. I've even had people tell me they keep the labels as little keepsakes, which makes me laugh. Imagine saving a label from a box of fudge like it's a souvenir. But hey, I'll take it as a compliment. Of course, not every batch has been perfect. When I first started making fudge, it definitely didn't come out as smooth and beautiful as it does today. My early batches were burned, cracked, and when I went to cut them, each piece looked like it came from a completely different universe. Different shapes, different sizes, some so wonky they could have been modern art. Honestly, if abstract art needed an edible category, my first fudge would have won first place. There was also the year I was in a rush and didn't let the fudge set properly. Let's just say it turned into fudge sauce and I had to quickly pivot and pretend I meant to make ice cream topping. The kids didn't mind, but the adults definitely gave me that polite smile that said, "This isn't really what I expected." Another time I misjudged the temperature, ended up with fudge so hard you could chip a tooth. I remember joking that I could use it as a doorstop, or maybe a paperweight for my photography studio. These days, I double-check everything because once you've had a fudge fail, you never forget it. But here's the thing, those little mishaps are part of the journey. They make the successes even sweeter. They teach you what not to do. And they give me stories that keep everyone laughing long after the fudge is gone. Now, let's talk about storing fudge, because one of the best things about it is how well it keeps. Fudge is one of those rare candies that actually gets better after resting a bit, but you have to store it properly. In the fridge, fudge can last up to 2 weeks if you keep it in an airtight container. I like to layer parchment paper between the pieces so they don't stick together and look messy when you pull them out. Trust me, nothing ruins the wow factor of a gift box faster than a clump of fudge squares glued together like Legos. If you want to make fudge well ahead of time, the freezer is your best friend. Fudge freezes beautifully for up to 3 months, and freezing lets you get a big jump on holiday gifting. Personally, I've found the best way is to freeze fudge in big blocks instead of cutting it right away. Keeping it as one solid slab helps prevent the edges from drying out, keeps the texture creamy, and makes it much easier to wrap tightly without exposing lots of little sides to the cold air. When I'm ready to use it, I pull out the block, let it thaw slowly in the fridge, and then cut it into neat squares just before serving or gifting. That way the pieces look fresh and glossy, and they don't have that slightly dry look that can happen when individual cubes sit in the freezer too long. Of course, I still double wrap it, plastic wrap first, then tuck it into a freezer bag, because nothing ruins fudge faster than freezer burn or the smell of leftover lasagna creeping in. And you know me, I always label those bags with a black Sharpie and the date. This is my standard freezer labeling method, because nothing's worse than mystery chocolate chunks in the freezer. Another little tip, portion the fudge into family-size bags before freezing. This method is perfect for small family treats and those late-night sweet tooth moments when you just want a little something without defrosting a mountain of fudge. That way, you're not thawing the whole batch at once and risk it drying out. I've learned this the hard way when I pulled out an entire pan and we ended up with way too much fudge to eat at once, which sounds like a dream, but trust me, it's a lot of fudge. Splitting into smaller portions also means you can grab just enough for one party, one teacher gift, or one late-night snack emergency without committing to a sugar overload. It's one of those small tricks that makes a big difference in keeping fudge practical, pretty, and ready whenever you need it. So there you have it, my fudge frenzy of chocolate, peppermint, and pistachio. With a few simple tools, some thoughtful packaging, and a little planning, you can turn a humble pan of fudge into a holiday gift that feels truly special. If you want to try these recipes yourself, I'll leave the links in the podcast notes for my chocolate, peppermint, and pistachio fudge recipes, plus the tools and packaging I use. You can also visit my blog at Arina Photography for all my fudge recipes, and check out my YouTube channel where I share detailed video tutorials to walk you through step by step. Happy fudge making, happy gifting, and may your holiday season be just as sweet.